From the Lincoln Journal-Star, this is the Life in the Red podcast with Luke Mullen and Amy Just.
Hey folks, welcome back to the Life in the Red podcast. Luke Mullen and Amy Just back with you. I know it's been a few weeks since we sat down. I think we were probably in the midst of spring football and all sorts of stuff going on, probably a couple weeks ago. Yeah, we had some good stuff in the meantime, most definitely. But wanted to come back and update you. This is, by the way, our final episode of this kind of sports calendar year. Don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We'll be back with you soon enough. Football will be starting up before we know it. But some odds and ends kind of to wrap up before we sign off for the summer. And want to talk about, one of the big events that we've been looking forward to seeing how it would shake out, the Husker games, as they deemed it, the replacement of the red-white spring game. And of course, it was more than just football, what they had planned for the fans. Just to start off with, did we like what transpired on that day?
There are some things that I liked. I liked the garage sale. I liked the volleyball exhibition game on campus. Soccer ended up winning. I thought that was really cool that they co-branded that with the Husker games as well. I know that was a little overlooked on that day with football running so long. Couldn't quite sneak over there to watch them take on Wyoming. But I mean, the more I've thought about the football aspect, the more I could have done without it. Personally, I know that a lot of the events were fun in the moment. Like the roping thing was kind of fun, right? Or the tractor pulling or whatever. But the kicking thing went on really long, and the whole football portion went on like almost an hour and a half longer than it needed to, in my opinion.
Yep. Could have been fast-paced, snappy. That would have been good.
That would have been much better. But as long as the players had fun, then I guess that's what matters at the end of the day. But it was really long, and if we're going to continue this moving forward, the event needs some editing.
Yeah. Honestly, I thought it was kind of sad. And I don't mean that. I mean, the event was fun, right? Like, if you were there, I'm sure it was, fun from a fan perspective. They did a lot of things, events and stuff before the game, too, that people could get interested in. The women's flag football game also took place before that, too. But, if you know what a usual spring game looks like and you were there, the two are not even remotely comparable.
No, not even a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, that was just a little bit jarring. The fact that, okay, we're going to go from 60,000 people to 7,000 or 8,000 people overnight. That change was really interesting to watch. And yeah, the equipment sale was nice. I think that was definitely something that people appreciated. If you had an eye towards, apparel, memorabilia, that piece of Husker history, a lot of people came out for that. And that was nice, to see that as part of the action. But yeah, in terms of the actual football event, it like always with the spring game, it always starts off strong, and then, people start, to have other things to do. It's a nice day, you go out, do other stuff. There was, of course, soccer and volleyball later in the day, but the way that it just remotely ended up, finishing, the wing eating contest and the football stuff just wrapped up very abruptly. It was kind of just okay. And that's it for the spring for Nebraska football.
Yeah, it definitely, I don't know. They need to refine it a little bit more. And yeah, the first edition of something is always kind of chaotic, but it felt like an afterthought, basically. And I know it wasn't. I know there was a lot of planning that went into it. It just felt like an afterthought.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this wasn't a Nebraska specific thing too, right? We saw this other
everywhere,
places nationally.
Just about everywhere.
Yeah, anybody that did anything for the spring, right?
With the exception of Oregon.
Yeah.
That had a real
game. It just
game.
Wasn't the same level of interest anywhere. I think it's the roster movement, the uncertainty, all the changes of college football, just the same level of excitement wasn't there from around the fan bases. And in terms of the actual football, yeah, we got to look at some of those players, got the chance to scrimmage a little bit, see some of those quarterbacks, see how those line players held up. But But really, the football action came and went pretty quickly. I think from the day's event, it was like, okay, a few plays here, and then it was like these long skill contests. That's what kind of felt like to me.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree.
So that was an interesting part of things. And then the volleyball as well, you mentioned, I think that was, what people were excited to see, get a whole look at this new roster, Danny Busboom, Kelly there in Devaney. And of course, they also scrimmaged South Dakota State and Ord. So any early takeaways just from what we've seen from volleyball this spring?
It's going to be really hard to make some roster decisions. That's my general takeaway. I don't know how you leave some of those players off the floor. The jury's still out on who the libero will be to replace Lexi Rodriguez. Middle seems pretty intact. I feel like that's the only for sure with that roster. But yeah, I'm really interested to see what that looks like because it could go so many different ways.
Yeah, very deep, very talented team, and still a lot to figure out about them. But they were in action this spring as well. So let's wrap up football, some odds and ends, and some off-season to-dos just to figure out about this Husker football team moving forward. First, two former Huskers selected in the NFL draft. Ty Robinson headed to the Philadelphia Eagles, and Thomas Fidone to the New York Giants.
Yeah, I'm happy for them. I'm kind of surprised it wasn't more. I'm also kind of surprised that Ty went as late as he did, air quotes on that. But man, that feels like a great fit for him. And I think that just based off of what the Eagles have said about him and what we know about him, I think he's going to contend for some playing time.
Yeah, talk about playing on a talented D-line already. Add Ty Robinson in there. I think they'll be pretty good. Another piece of update for you, Athletic Director Troy Dannon, he was appointed to the College Football Playoff Selection Committee. And when we're talking about that, I mean, this has long been something that college football fans have kind of said, like, oh, like this, administrators on the committee, like, is there preferential treatment? And, the CFB committee, they're always like, oh, yeah, they got to leave the room when their teams discuss. But ultimately, the guy in the room who knows Big Ten football, knows the Nebraska program, that's got to be pretty good for Nebraska fans to hear.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a big honor for Dannon. I will say, though, I personally agree with the fans in that I don't think sitting athletic directors should be allowed to be in the room because, like, if Nebraska gets discussed next season, which that would be crazy, but you never know, he would have to leave the room. But that doesn't mean that his presence doesn't influence other people. Like, you could say the same for any of the other sitting athletic directors. So this is not a knock on Troy. Like, if the opportunity is there, you should absolutely do it. It's an incredible experience. But I just don't think that we should have sitting athletic directors be on that committee. I don't like it personally.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting, setup, the way that it works. The power brokers in college football, the former administrators who are there part of it too. I just think that it certainly shows how well regarded he is, amongst
for sure. He's been on a bunch of NCAA committees, including some committees that have a lot of like power and influence over like the rules of the game and all of those things. And I think it says a lot about what he brings to the table, not just as an athletic director, but just as an administrator overall, especially when it comes to football. But yeah, no, I don't like sitting athletic directors being on the committee. And I feel that way about like AP voting because I had the AP vote for the state of Nebraska for a couple of years. I gave it up because what are you doing as like a beat writer or a columnist that covers one team? You are at that game. And so you don't get to watch as many games in real time as other people do. And so and then you're staying up super late watching a lot of games or like watching games back, watching highlights. I hope you're not just going off of the box score because as we know, games are not played on paper, right? not to go on like a super crazy rant or anything. I just think that, I don't know, like retired athletic directors, while they are admittedly biased from places that they've been, it's a little different because there's at least like one step removed. Like Jeff Long, for example, he's back on the committee now too, and I like that a little bit better than a sitting athletic director. But this is not me being anti-Dannon. I think it's a great opportunity. I just don't think it should be allowed for anybody at all.
It's going to be extra work for him to do, of course. Am I right in saying they're given like iPads with like game film to watch?
Yeah,
like
some tablet of some sort. Not sure who their sponsor is, if it's Apple or Microsoft or whatever. They try to
make it accessible to them, but still it's a lot of college football that you got to be watching if you're on that committee.
So. Yeah, and like you have to be present at your job that pays you, right? So.
Yep, got to have a close eye on everything that's going on. It's always a busy fall around Nebraska athletics, so more for Troy Dannon to do after that appointment. A couple other quick odds and ends from Nebraska football. 2 commitments on the recruiting trail. 2026 in-state linebacker Jace Reynolds out of Elkhorn North. He committed this week, and 2027 quarterback Trey Taylor last week as well. And man, you just got to say, in this era of high school recruiting, it's maybe a little bit less important, but what Matt Rule's done in landing different quarterbacks, obviously Dylan Raiola, all of his recruiting saga, but you go down the line, TJ Lateef, Dayton Raiola, and now Trey Taylor, some very highly regarded quarterback recruits who played at a high level. So very interested to see the development there in the future, that along the recruiting trail. And transfers still going on as well. Of course, the portal officially closed for entries, but players can still enter in their names, their intent, or could have entered in before, had to get that paperwork processed. And the news from Nebraska, again, we're still uncertain about the roster limits, so we'll see exactly what shakes out. The guys who have entered their names in: kicker Nico Ottomanelli, defensive backs DeAndre Barnes and Evan Taylor, offensive lineman Grant Segrin, and tight end Ian Flint. Among them, Segrin's name definitely stands out because you don't often hear Matt Rule, single out a guy, say, oh yeah, this guy's going to be something special. And he said that about Segrin, was really highly regarded for his spring camp performance by Rule.
Yeah. To me, it just looks like, kind of the odd man out in the depth chart and wants to go to a place where he can play. That's sounds like to me.
Well, quality linemen in the portal. Teams love him, and I think he's already announced on social media quite a few impressive offers. So clearly there was some interest out there. And looking at those other departures, I also look at Evan Taylor's name. I wrote about this a little bit just because it's an interesting situation where Nebraska loved the athletic potential. He had a pretty bad injury in high school that kept him out for a while. Still stood by him, let him come in, rehab, used the medical facilities, got back on the practice field and, was still working back towards that. And it just feels like something that in this era, teams just can't do that anymore, frankly.
Unfortunately, It's just the way it goes.
So wish those guys the best. We'll see what happens with that. And in a new transfer in, maybe a surprise as the team's looking for a punter, but it was a kicker, Kyle Kananen, coming over from California. He'd been at a couple other places too. Some competition in that kicker room. Yeah,
how about that? When I heard that a specialist was going to be committing, I was like, ooh, a punter. Nope, not yet. We'll get there, but not yet, apparently.
Yeah, so they still need to decide, who's going to be the kickoff specialist, who's going to be the kicker, and let's bring that into a couple of burning questions that we need to know about this football team by the time August rolls around. That special teams room, who's going to be the punter? They need to bring somebody in, and who's ultimately going to win that kicker competition, because they got a couple guys who are going to be fighting for it.
Yeah, I don't think the punter is here. I think he is currently somewhere else, getting ready for finals or having finished them already, depending on what school you go to. And then kicker, I'm really interested to see how that's going to go, because you wouldn't think that the Cal guy would come here if he didn't think he had a shot.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like John Hull, after some strong performances last year, could be back to it. But gosh, that whatever they do in camp, however they kick behind those closed doors, that's going to be so important. So we'll see that. And then as well, what's the offensive line going to look like? We got some sort of a preview of it. We saw some guys in some spots this spring, but doesn't mean they're going to be in the same spots in the fall.
No, and it's important to know just how many guys with starting experience did not do much at all this spring because of their various injuries. How will they factor in to the starting lineup in August? It's really interesting.
Yep. Definitely at that tackle position, Gunnar Gatula, Turner Corcoran, Teddy Prohaska all did not take part in the spring. So they'll get those guys back, be able to evaluate them. And then another position, which we're looking at, how's the depth at running back? We know about Emma Johnson, but behind him, it's untested.
Yeah. I'm not as worried about that specifically yet. I think that'll figure itself out. Because, we had that question last year too, and it ended up being just fine.
I don't know. I'm worried about it because it's not experience. Last year was like, well, there's a lot of guys here, but they playing in games. Quentin Ives, he's got a bowl game. Makai Nelson, he's got nothing. These guys, we'll see what they look like. But Nebraska, I think it shows the confidence in them that they haven't added anybody in that running back room. And then defensively, we could go by the positions, but just in general, I think the question is who's going to be the difference maker there on that side of the ball.
My early leader is Riley Van Poppel.
Oh, yeah. He's a guy. Yep.
He is just a formidable looking person.
Yep.
When he stands on the podium, when he's talking at the lectern, he's, because of the podium height, it looks like he's like almost 7 feet tall.
Well, he's definitely added to his frame considerably in the last year or two. That redshirt year did a whole lot for him. And somebody that I would just go throw a name out there, Dasan McCullough. I think he's gonna be a big time player for that defense. So wrapping up there with Husker football, of course, we'll have a lot more in a couple months' time after they get back to it. But we'll wrap today with some Nebraska softball discussion. Husker baseball, of course, looking to make the Big Ten tournament, trying to stay alive with their postseason. But postseason is here for Nebraska softball. Big Ten tournament starts this weekend. But first wanted to give a shout out to all the folks who packed in to Bullen Stadium during a really impressive weekend. Had over 3,000 people there on Saturday, single game program record. They also set the 3-game series record over the weekend. Also had senior day there, some really important seniors who they celebrated on Sunday. 3-game sweep. Jordy Bahl was dominant. It was just a heck of a weekend for Nebraska softball.
And apparently the weather was super nice too.
Yep, it was sunny.
Love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
Can't ask for more than that. So let's talk about the Huskers. They are seeded 3rd into the Big Ten tournament. They're going to be playing Penn State in the quarterfinals. They took down Iowa earlier today, Wednesday, as we record this. And you look at that, didn't play Penn State in the regular season. They do have some talent in that lineup. And then UCLA would be a potential semifinal opponent. Top-seeded Oregon, also part of that Big Ten tournament. UCLA and Oregon, by far the top 2 teams in the conference alongside Nebraska. And in a different year, pre-UCLA, Oregon, Big Ten expansion, you'd say, wow, this Nebraska softball team could roll through the Big Ten. This year, you're like, man, this is a tough conference tournament field.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And you can't forget about Ohio State either. Yep. They're on the other side of the bracket with
Northwestern,
Oregon.
Washington. Yeah. A lot of good teams.
If Nebraska series against Ohio State earlier this season is any indication, who knows what that could happen. You could have really, really hot bats, and that'll change things. But yeah, I'm really interested to see how this week goes for Nebraska. I think anything is possible for them, including running the table or getting bounced early. It just kind of depends on what version of them shows up.
Yeah, going to have to be strategic in the way you use this pitching staff. Jordy Bahl, she's a workhorse. She could throw you a complete game, come back and throw you another, but do they want to do that? Do they want to pitch her right away in that quarterfinal matchup? I think they do. They need to, at least for part of it. So I think that would be the method. You've also got Kylie McGee and Hannah Cammonson who've thrown about 50, 60 innings apiece. I think try to get an inning or two out of a couple of those other relievers and use Jordy for most of the matchup, to me, would be the method there.
Yeah. But you don't want to overdo it too, right? Because you also have the following week to think about. So I'm curious to see the strategy as to how they use Jordy this week.
Yeah, definitely. Because the NCAA tournament is coming up after that. The Huskers, regardless of what they do, could secure the tournament, championship, the automatic berth, but also have an at-large bid likely locked up They're looking like a 2 seed in the regional, depending on your projections. A little bit below regional host, and probably not enough work to do in terms of changing the RPI this weekend. But as we
beating UCLA could help them, but I don't think it would be enough to move them into the top 16. They can jump a couple. Yeah. But yeah, they're at 25. Last I checked earlier today. So
yeah, but when we talk about NCAA tournament chances for this team, Jordy Bahl gives you a chance in any one-off game.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen how well this team has hit. I mean, they're top 10 batting average, top 10 home runs team nationally. They've run ruled so many fantastic teams, not just beating them, run ruling them, stacking 14, 15 runs in a game. So, man, if all those things are together, this is a Nebraska team that can make some noise.
No, I absolutely agree with that. I mean, they've got 98 home runs right now. I anticipate that will continue to climb. I have no reason why not. I mean, I don't want to be the jinx. They've been so electric at the plate this season. And like I said, they could put it together against anybody on any night, which makes it interesting.
Yeah, and I think for me, what's been really impressive about the hitting performances, following this team all year is that pretty much the entire starting lineup is hitting 300 right now.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got so much talent, and there's so many good bats that you've got a player like Emerson Cope, who really should be an everyday lineup, everyday player in the lineup, great power hitter. They use her off the bench as a pinch hitter in key moments. And I mean, she's hitting like 350 as well. Hits a ton of doubles. They've got so much depth as well they haven't gotten to. But in these one-off games, ultimately it comes down to just who's out there. And there is that moment of hey, if you run into some trouble, let's say, Jordy has a bad inning. I mean, that could sink this whole Nebraska team. But ultimately, I think you look at what they've done at the plate and Jordy Bahl's experience. Of course, she's gone all the way twice with Oklahoma. I think there's a lot to like about this Nebraska team, and whichever regional host gets Nebraska as their number 2 seed, I think is going to be quite upset.
Yep, for sure. Could you imagine if they end up in Norman?
That would be some drama.
The understatement of the year.
The all-time drama.
All-time, for sure.
Yeah.
It could happen.
Indeed. Oklahoma softball, great again.
Shocking.
As always.
Shocking.
Yep. But it's gonna be a fun Big Ten tournament, gonna be a fun NCAA tournament as well, and looking forward to seeing what happens. Hope all of you will stay along, follow along the journey. As always, we'll have all those updates for you at journalstar.com, and feels fitting then to thank all of you listeners and viewers out there. We really do appreciate all the support. Those of you who've tuned in from the start of the football season, basketball, this spring sports season as well. It's been a lot of fun breaking down everything. Thanks, Amy, for all your work as well.
Yeah, I'm just happy to be here.
Just here for the journey, yeah. But yes, that is going to do it, I think, for this season of the Life in the Red podcast. We'll be back before you know it. Lots of football discussion to come, July, August, and more. We'll be back with you then, and that will do it for this episode of the Life in the Red podcast. We'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this week's Life in the Red podcast. Our theme music is composed by Sasha Indy. The stories continue on journalstar.com.